You ever notice how the Jedi are basically the galaxy's worst pen pals? They take your kid, promise they'll train them to be a noble guardian of peace, and then completely vanish from your life. No postcards from Coruscant. No, hey, your son just learned how to deflect blaster bolts. He's doing great. Nothing. It's like your kid went to space summer camp, and the camp burned down, but no one thought to tell you. And the thing is, they make it sound like this is for your own good. Attachment is forbidden, they say. Like they're allergic to emotional support. I get it. The Force needs focus. But come on. You can't just scoop up a toddler, stick a lightsaber in their hands, and pretend their mum doesn't exist. It's like the galaxy's coldest adoption agency, with bonus war crimes. Now, take Anakin Skywalker. Kid grows up in slavery, finally gets out because a robed stranger shows up and wins him in a pod race. Sounds insane already, right? But then they leave his mum behind, like she's some unpaid bill they'll get around to later. Years go by, nobody checks on her, and then everyone's shocked when Anakin starts getting twitchy about his nightmares. Yeah, wonder why, and you can see how this snowballs. The Jedi think they're creating disciplined warriors, but what they're really making are emotionally stunted powder kegs. You teach someone from day one that love is weakness, and then you act surprised when they can't process grief without murdering a room full of people. That's not destiny, that's bad HR policy. But here's the kicker. If the Jedi had just taken care of the families they left behind, we might not have gotten Darth Vader at all. Imagine Anakin growing up knowing his mum was safe, his home world was free, and the people who took him away actually gave a damn. That's not just character development, that's galactic insurance. In this video, we're breaking down exactly how the Jedi's cold shoulder to families wasn't just a moral failing, it was a ticking time bomb. We'll talk about why Shmi Skywalker's lonely fate was more important than anyone admits. How ignoring the people they left behind created resentment across the galaxy. And why this blind spot might have been the single biggest reason the Chosen One became the galaxy's greatest nightmare. No trial period, no family counseling, no here's how to send letters to your mom on Tatooine. Just a lifetime membership in the Order, whether you understand what's happening or not. And if you ask questions, they hit you with the whole attachment is forbidden spiel, like it's supposed to make perfect sense. It makes you wonder what the Jedi thought happened to the families they left behind. Did they picture them going home with a smile, proudly telling everyone their kid was now part of some ancient space cult? Or did they just assume people moved on, like their child was a lost pet that wandered off into the galaxy? We never hear about a follow-up visit, or a Jedi caseworker checking in on mum and dad. Just radio silence forever, and that's where the mystery deepens. Because if the Jedi are supposed to embody compassion, wouldn't supporting those families be part of that mission? Even a token gesture like financial help, medical aid, or simply answering their questions would have mattered. But instead, it's like the parents never existed after the kid joined. When you look at Anakin's story, the absence is glaring. Shmi Skywalker is left enslaved on Tatooine, while her son trains to be a Jedi hero. Not one member of the Order seems to think, hey, maybe we should check on her. Qui-Gon risked life and limb to get Anakin out, but apparently freeing his mother was a bridge too far. It's a curious oversight, especially for people who constantly preach about the Force being in all living things. If they truly believed that, wouldn't the suffering of a family member matter as much as the child's training? Or was this all part of their grand design to sever ties completely? Because if that's the case, then maybe the Jedi weren't just ignoring families, they were deliberately erasing them. The more you think about it, the more infuriating it gets. The Jedi weren't just passively neglecting families, they were actively avoiding them. They had the resources, the influence, and the ships to make a difference, and yet they chose to do nothing. It's like they were allergic to basic empathy outside their temple walls. We're not talking about impossible feats here. A single Jedi could have freed Shmi with the credits they probably spent on temple cafeteria snacks in a month. They could have provided updates, offered support, or at least told families what the child was doing. But no, instead they hid behind that thin excuse of attachments lead to the dark side, as if showing compassion to the people who raised their Padawans would suddenly turn them into Sith Lords. There's a quiet tragedy in imagining Shmi Skywalker going to bed every night, wondering if her son was safe. She never got a letter, never saw a picture, never even heard his voice after he left. For all she knew, he could have been dead, and she would have had no way of finding out. That kind of silence isn't just neglect, it's cruelty, masked as necessity. And Shmi's case isn't unique. Think of all the nameless parents on nameless worlds who lost their children to the Jedi. Farmers, miners, traders, people who probably had no way to understand what the Jedi even were. Their kids vanish into a temple somewhere, and the family's life is simply expected to go on. It's like ripping a page out of a book and pretending the story still makes sense. For Anakin, that separation became a wound that never healed. Every victory he had as a Jedi was shadowed by the thought of the mother he left behind. By the time he was reunited with her, it was too late. She was dying in his arms. That grief, that helplessness, was the seed that Palpatine would later nurture into rage. What hurts most is that it didn't have to be this way. A single visit, a single act of kindness, might have kept that bond alive without violating the Jedi Code. Anakin could have been reminded that compassion didn't have to mean attachment, that love for family could coexist with duty. But he never got that lesson. Instead, the message was clear. The Jedi way was the only way, and everything else was expendable. And when a person learns that early, they stop trusting that the people in charge have their best interests at heart. For Anakin, it meant he'd never truly believed the Jedi were on his side. It's honestly mind-blowing to think how easily the Jedi could have changed the course of history. One decision, one choice, to support the families they left behind. And we might be talking about Anakin Skywalker as the greatest Jedi who ever lived, instead of the galaxy's most feared Sith Lord. The domino effect is staggering. Imagine if Anakin had grown up, knowing his mother was safe and free. Imagine if every Padawan knew their family was cared for, that the Jedi weren't just taking them, but also taking responsibility for the people who loved them. That would have built a generation of Jedi with a deep, unshakable trust in the Order. That trust could have been the shield against Palpatine's manipulation. The thing is, the Jedi were brilliant in so many ways. Their mastery of the Force, their diplomatic skill, their ability to shape galactic politics, they were the ultimate power brokers. And yet, when it came to the small, human details, they were astonishingly blind. It's like watching a master painter ignore the canvas edges and let the whole picture fray. But here's the thing. Just because the Jedi failed, doesn't mean the idea of a Force-sensitive Order is doomed. We can imagine a version of the Jedi that does it differently. One that still trains children, but also embraces the people they come from. One that sees families as allies, not liabilities. Picture a Jedi returning to a child's home once a year, updating the family, sharing the child's progress, even helping the community with local problems. That kind of connection wouldn't weaken the Jedi, it would strengthen them. It would create a network of trust across the galaxy. Even in Anakin's case, it's not hard to picture an alternate future. The Jedi could have freed Shmi, given her a safe home, and still trained her son. Anakin would have grown up knowing his mother was safe and cared for, without the fear and guilt that haunted him. That alone might have kept him from the path to the dark side. And beyond Anakin, it could have changed how the galaxy saw the Jedi. Instead of aloof mystics locked away in their temple, they'd be seen as genuine protectors. People would have fought to defend them, not cheer when they fell. The tragedy of the Jedi's fall is that it wasn't inevitable. With just a little more heart, a little more humility, they could have been more than symbols. They could have been the kind of heroes even the darkest times couldn't break. In the end, the Jedi's greatest failure wasn't Order 66, or their defeat at the hands of the Sith. It was the quiet, invisible choice to turn their backs on the families they left behind. They taught generations of children that the Order came first, and everything else was expendable. And in doing so, they planted the seeds of their own destruction. Anakin Skywalker's story is just the most famous example. Without Shmi, without that bond, he was left vulnerable. Palpatine didn't have to create his weakness, he just had to exploit the one the Jedi had already carved into him. And once that crack was widened, there was no going back. This wasn't about breaking the code, it was about bending it toward compassion. And they never did. Maybe they thought detachment would make them stronger, but in reality, it made them brittle. And brittle things shatter under pressure. The irony is almost poetic. In trying to avoid the pain of loss, the Jedi created the very conditions that led to their greatest losses. They thought they were preventing darkness, but they were just setting the stage for it. So when the temple burned, and the clones turned, it wasn't just the will of the Force, it was the will of years of neglect finally coming due. And the galaxy moved on, not because the Jedi were defeated in battle, but because they had already lost where it mattered most. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.